All right, so I'm sitting here reading this indie book, Watcher of the Damned, and there's a lot of Fallout elements in this. And I've said before, maybe not on this channel, but on other people's channels, I really don't like Fallout, and I shouldn't be reading this book. But Fallout is a kind of post-apocalyptic world that doesn't make sense. And what really kind of got my brain going was from Watcher of the Damned here by R.H. Snow. There's this idea that it's like 80 years after this apocalypse event happens, that somehow there are still houses to loot with stuff worth looting in them. Now, let's set aside rust, animals, rot, decay. Um, there's just no way it takes 80 years to loot a settlement, even if you are by yourself. Like, my town, let's call it as 10,000 houses. If you're looting houses for supplies, all you need is food, weapons, medical supplies. That is not very hard to ransack out of a house. Now, most houses aren't going to have guns. Most aren't even going to have particularly good medical supplies. You're actually going to have to go to stores and such. And simply put, I'm confident that a survivor looting for resources could easily go through multiple houses in one day. Because you're not looking for that much. Unless you are spreading it out and only looting as fast as you need food. And even then, let's call that one house a day you need to loot. And we can talk about how long you can survive off a grocery store another time, because guess what? Food goes bad. You need to start farming very quickly. But let's just say each house has enough canned food for a person to survive in a day. Because let's be honest here, take a look at your pantry. If you got locked in your house, how long could you actually survive? Now, I could have enough food in my house, so I could probably survive a while. Most people I know, maybe that's because I mostly know bachelors, have maybe a week's supply of food. And a lot of that is perishable, will rot, and won't be edible after a while. So, in an apocalypse scenario, you're talking about canned goods, dry food mostly, ways for you to get water. But even then, okay, let's say each house lets you live, instead he said at 3 days. That's 30,000 days of looting to survive. Okay. That's not 80 years of survival, and that's assuming one person by themselves is looting a 10,000 home city. Which is just no apocalypse scenario ever, except maybe Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Which no one really wants to write except him, because there's almost no story if there's almost nobody alive. Every post-apocalypse story you come across, there's actually bands of survivors. You're talking dozens of people need to eat in a small area, and they are fending for territory for scavenging rights against other bands of dozens of people, is the standard trope. And the fact of the matter is, those supplies will just get devoured very quickly. That was actually my big concern when the virus that shall not be named unless I get suppressed went around. The question was, how do the trucks keep moving? If this is as bad as they say it is, I'm not worried about the virus. I'm worried about the grocery store running empty. And then having a whole bunch of people not being able to eat. Then what happens? You look at something like The Walking Dead, and they tacitly admit that the conflict is person to person. Even if you pretend that there are these enormous hordes of zombies out there, that's not ever really the conflict point, because that's just not interesting. You look at other stories such as Shaun of the Dead, and that, because it's a comedy, it kind of takes the point that the military mops it up in like a day. In fact, if anyone is watching this right now, given the thumbnail I put together for this, and they think a zombie apocalypse can really get out of hand, like, look, to put it at very simple numbers, and I will get into more complicated numbers, if 90% of humanity turns into a zombie, that means of the survivors, they each need to kill 9 zombies on average, and the apocalypse is over. And how long would that really take? a week. Be real here. The breakdown of the economy and the ability to get food from farms to people is by far the more lethal solution than any amount of zombies. Because even if there are hordes and hordes and hordes of zombies, fact of the matter is you're going to run out of food first. Unless you're like the lone person locked in a grocery store, like the luckiest timing on a Mr. Beast video. And guess what? Or no, that was Food Theory. Did the math that if you lock yourself, one person locks themselves in a grocery store, as long as they start farming, which that's cheating, but if they start farming from their own manure, they don't have to leave because they can produce the calories, because without doing that, it's one person in an entire fully stocked grocery store will starve in something like 6 months. And that's if they don't leave, and that's getting a whole grocery store, when one grocery store services thousands of people if you're in a moderately populated area, like most people are. The numbers just don't make sense. That's what bugs me. That's why I haven't released my zombie apocalypse stories. It's not that I haven't thought about them. Good God, I grew up in the 2000s. They were all the rage. Everybody talked about zombie survival strategies. And that's another reason of why a zombie apocalypse would never happen, because there are too many people that are just like, oh, it's on now. It's on now. We got to do all of our book out plans. Oh my God, it's time. And how many do you need that just kind of go rampant out there cleaning things up until it's over? And then you have the breakdown, which, let's be real, can be caused by all kinds of things. We have huge historical references for what happens when logistics of the economy shuts down, say because of war. Say a couple of 10,000 underpaid Russian mercenaries occupies your city. That's a bit worse than a zombie horde, I think. I don't know if that means any. I don't know if that's inappropriate to say here. But like, if you do want to construct a zombie apocalypse, like I have tried to do, it really gets into the numbers and the assumptions that you're making, because you have to start asking yourself, like, okay, how many zombies happen before people react? Like an immune system response. You're going to have a state level immune system response of how long until people realize they need to start cleaning up the infected. Which might be they realize that they need to do that before you can even count how many there are accurately. It just doesn't happen. Which means you don't have a zombie apocalypse story, now do you? Now, let's say it's a bio attack and they aerosolize, spray a bomb into Denver airport, and it spreads all around the world instantaneously and completely gets out of hand. Okay, maybe you'll get enough initial population before people start saying, "Oh, it's time to take out the shovel and start cracking skulls." Then you start asking the question of, how many zombies is the average person going to kill over time? And how many of those people in that same time are going to die from failing to take out zombies? You could probably classify people into 3 groups. The useless, such as kids and the very elderly. Opportunistic hunters that are just going to go about their day, say, farming, and if they see a zombie, will take out a gun and shoot it, but they're not going to go hunt them down. And then you are going to have some people that are just out there hunting them. Or whatever their circumstances are, draws them into regular conflict with zombies. Maybe they're just drunk driving because it's the end of the world, and they pop that handbrake and power slide their pickup truck through a sidewalk. Boom, 5. All right. Making some guesses here. You start looking at okay, so what are the numbers actually happening? If you actually say do a numerical analysis, like so. Let's imagine a state of 10 million people, and boom, the bomb goes off. 10% of them become zombies, and then they get the drop on the survivors and take out like half of them. But then the survivors just all turn around, and guess what? There's half of them still alive. That means each survivor needs to kill one zombie, and it's over. It's not exactly much of an apocalypse. Okay. What if there's more? What if, boom, half the population turns into zombies, and then they get a decent drop on them? They're down to a third of the population. But like, if you can kill, if each person is killing like 2 zombies per time interval, and they aren't dying, if they're just playing it safe, let's say, a lot of people hunker down and just like wait for a zombie to crawl through the door, like Project Zomboid, and crack it over with a crowbar. Boom, 4 time intervals and it's done. Not a zombie apocalypse. It just doesn't play out that way. That's probably 4 weeks. And guess what? There is enough reserve food out there that the economy would just restart in morning because Thanos snapped. But that's not a zombie apocalypse. That is an economic collapse. Okay, maybe that's a bad solution. What if less infectious at the start? But the question is just like, how? Okay, let me start bringing down the survival rate. Oh, I didn't give enough zombies at the beginning, and they just killed them all. Okay. Again, this just doesn't work. Too many survivors in the beginning, not enough monsters. The ratio of hunters to prey just ends the apocalypse. Boom, 2 weeks. I found one scenario as I was sitting here tinkering around in Excel making graphs like a goddamn nerd that I am. This scenario right here is the only scenario I found in the half hour I was tinkering with this before recording this video that actually produces a zombie apocalypse scenario. This assumes, for a population of 10 million people, that 1 out of 3 got infected before people realized there was an infection. Which is not, I don't even know how to contrive that happening into a story, but let's assume that. This assumes that in the first attack, 40% of people are killed. 40% of the people that were not turned into zombies survive, and 60% turn into more zombies. But the 40% that survive killed their zombie, and so it was a 1-for-1 on average. This assumes that after that, there is a 60% survival for every survivor per time interval. This assumes that 40% of survivors are useless, 50% are opportunistic only. These are the truck drivers still trying to move food around that will, pull out a gun when they get woken up in the middle of the night and take care of the one straggler they happen upon and then get on with their life. And this assumes that 10% of people are going out there and making hay, and that's exactly 5 kills per time interval. This gets to a steady state that may eventually peter out with no one surviving, but from 10 million, this got down to 27,000 people at the 10th time interval. And I could probably just extend this and figure out, however long in the future it is. But as you can see, that there is a 3-to-1 ratio that is persisting because populations are fundamentally exponential when you model them like this. So, every time interval, there's going to be less survivors, but they're going to take out a proportional amount of zombies. And over time, miraculously, because this managed to exist, and you don't end up with, say, a military coming in and cleaning it up, or just people creating an efficient kill funnel, or it just doesn't, if people just don't find a better way to bunker down and survive or something, if it stays like this, maybe you get a steady state zombie apocalypse scenario. But how many assumptions do I just have to make to try and contrive a stupid tropey genre that people are tired of? This is the problem with zombie apocalypses. This is why I haven't released my zombie apocalypse book yet, even though I have put a lot more thought into this just because I wanted to put up some population graphs. Because the real apocalypse is the apocalypse where you still have to go to your day job. Because if you don't want the population to go to 0, you still want the local areas to have a 50,000 human carrying population, because that's theoretically how many you need to repopulate. That's per area, right? You can go lower if you're going to, say, do what Israel does and start some kind of genetic screening matchup app or something. You can get down to like 20,000 without getting, say, the strong Habsburg jaw here. If you want people to be able to, the zombies have to stick around for a while, giving room for conflict, and enough time to break down the society and reform another society. and people don't starve to death, because very quickly that becomes the much larger issue. Because, like, most people are going to be in cities. You can't hunt in a city. Well, at least not quickly. Yeah, and you might have I Am Legend, and deer will eventually show back up. You know, maybe you got the urban pheasant population like Detroit used to have. That's not reliable hunting. Not, at least not soon. That's going to be years later. Maybe urban centers will have enough game to hunt in. Guess what? You can't just run out to the rural areas and expect that you can meat harvest for days, because there isn't that much wild animals out there anymore, which is a tragedy. And I think people need to give more of a shit about habitat rather than carbon dioxide, but that's another political video I probably shouldn't make. But hey, you know what? Stay tuned for me, will you? Because maybe I'll figure out a way to incorporate all the ideas of how I can tweak in a working, satisfying zombie apocalypse that feels like a zombie apocalypse and still has the tropes that made people like the genre, but actually works and doesn't beg the viewer to just turn off their brain. You know, maybe I can come up and give you, readers, consumers of my stories, a story that actually works and will let people go, oh, wow, you know, my survival strategy would kind of work, but maybe under these circumstances, you know, maybe like I think of the 28 Days Later stuff where it's just, oh, make them super hyper rager, you know, explodey boys that in one drop of blood and you're dead, just super hyper lethal. Like, that ends up with killing everyone. If I want somewhere people can rebuild, and I can't do something as grotesque as that, and it just gets hard. I think that's fundamentally what killed the post-apocalyptic genre, and stopped it from being a trend. I know people still enjoy it, in particular, like Fallout 4 was big. People are still producing books like Watcher of the Damned, and so adding new things to the genre. But it's a pretty beaten down genre, let's be real. People have dissected these ideas so much that, like, I don't think I presented anything weird here at all. I'm pretty sure anyone with a high school education should have been able to follow these graphs, even as loosely described as I just gave them, and just see that, yeah, these issues don't really make sense, and I don't think we've ever seen a good portrayal of it. Except in stories maybe where you're talking about like localized disasters. You know, earlier this year I read Dark Harvest by Critical Drinker, which is actually a zombie apocalypse story, but it is a story where the idea is that 99% of humanity is going to die. Maybe a few people will be naturally immune, hiding in a bunker, and they aren't going to go out there and kill the zombies. They're going to just wait for them to decay. Which I didn't even touch on. I assumed the worst case scenario in my graphs that zombies live forever, because there are stories like that. But hey, maybe I will be able to pull it off in the future. Until then, though, I do gotta remind you that I'm James Craig. I am a cyberpunk guy. Wait a minute, not that. Why do I still have that in OBS? And you should check out my book. It's pretty good, and it might technically be a zombie apocalypse story. I think you need to read and find out. Till then, please hit the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe, tell your friends, watch it again on half speed so that YouTube really thinks that you like this video. Cheers. Oh, don't forget the book club.